everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. My name is Mel with Energetic Principles.
And I'm Shawna with Neo Feminine Astrology.
And in this episode, we will be discussing the astrology for the week of June 26th, and what we have titled, Trying to Find a Balance. So the purpose of this podcast is to give inspiration and guidance for this week with real-life examples of what to expect.
The three major aspects that we'll talk about today are the first quarter moon in Libra, which is all about finding peace within conflict. We'll talk about Mercury and Mars opposite Pluto, which we're calling Tell Me How You Feel. And the last aspect that we'll talk about today is Mercury square Jupiter, which is about shifting your perspective. So please remember that these transits will influence you more. Some will influence you more than others based on your personal birth chart. That's why we give the dates and the degrees. So notice what resonates with you most, take what you like, and always use your intuition and logic to decide what's best for you.
Yes, absolutely, because you know what's best for you. So whatever sticks out to you, pay attention. So let's kick off this week's episode with a quick rundown of the moon's path through the zodiac and some other minor aspects for you astro geeks out there. So we're going to start the week off with the waxing moon in Leo until it makes a move on Tuesday evening into the earthy realms of Virgo, where it will remain until the early hours of Friday the 30th, when it will then move into Libra, which we'll discuss in detail shortly. We spend the weekend in airy Libra territory before moving into the watery depths of Scorpio on Sunday morning. And of notable mention is Mercury will be trining Neptune on Tuesday, June 27th. So this might lead us down a dreamy path where creativity is in full force with Mercury in Cancer and Neptune in Pisces. So it could be a perfect day to use to do some Imagineering in your life. Just make sure those visions are grounded in reality. And then also on Wednesday, June 28th, Mercury will conjunct Mars in Cancer, where our mind and our drive will be on the same page. Which can make for an excellent day of action. So, especially if it involves what you just dreamt up. But we'll also be talking about that Mercury-Mars conjunction, later in, this episode, and how that ties in with that Pluto transit, Shawna was just mentioning. Let's get started. Let's kick it off with our first aspect here, which is actually last in the chain of succession, and that is the first quarter moon in Libra, what we are deeming find peace within conflict. And just so you know, that first quarter moon in Libra will be Friday, June 30th at 5:51 p.m. Pacific time. That's 12:51 a.m. Universal time. And Saturday, 10 a.m. Australian time. And that will be at 9 degrees Libra. So Shawna, bring us in with the quote you have for this first quarter moon.
Yes, I'd love to. So this quote is by Pema Chodron, the American Tibetan Buddhist author and teacher. She says, "Inner peace begins the moment you choose not to allow another person or event to control your emotions." And I love this so much because it really brings all of this first quarter moon and the sign of Libra down to earth for us. So Libra is about finding balance. It's about finding peace. That's what we're trying to do. And the first quarter moon, it marks a phase or a point where there may be some type of external conflict. It's that point when the little seedling is trying to burst out of the sidewalk. And so there's a little push that's needed to meet that challenge. And throughout this week, it's so important that we do remember what we have control over and that what's on the outside doesn't always have to create this avalanche on the inside. So I love that quote for this particular aspect.
Yeah, Shawna, I love the title that you chose for this first quarter moon because I think it really sets up the nature for all three transits we're going to talk about today. Because this building energy, this building emotional energy, is really going to have have an apex of sense when we hit this first quarter moon, because the other aspects we're going to talk about here shortly will have happened before we get to this moon. So there's just there's this intense brewing, and there's just, I don't know, find peace within conflict really works for me, for this transit. So yay.
Yeah. And I think it's a time where there will be some sense of conflict, whether that's a major issue or just something that feels a little uncomfortable. And I think that this entire week, and especially this first quarter moon that's happening on Friday, there's going to be something that you need to do. There's going to be a place where it's beneficial for you to stand up or to take action and to say, hey, this is what's so, or this isn't right, etc. And how can you do that in a way where it doesn't have to be a disruptor in your life? How can you do that in a way that that allows you to keep your inner peace and then to also meet the conflict at the same time? I think so often that we see conflict as a negative thing. It means something bad is happening. But the nature of life is conflict.
Yes, that's true.
So yeah, so I love this quote and that title, because yeah, it's like, how can we meet conflict in a way where it doesn't have to be a bad thing? It can actually be a great thing to work out conflict.
Yeah, because if we don't work it out outside of us, then it essentially stays on the inner, and it wreaks havoc on our emotions. And here we are talking about the sun in Cancer, and the sun in Cancer is all about that emotional foundation and that emotional awareness. So if we don't allow ourselves to have this conflict in a sense, we're going to miss out on our turning point. Like, this is the first quarter moon. This is whatever emotions that we're letting out, now, and we're really getting in touch with, and just our emotional, temperature and like radar right now. If we aren't in a good space with that and like kind of coming up, and tackling those emotional challenges, then the energy is going to keep building regardless if we're on the same page or not. So the purpose of this first quarter moon is to really get us on an emotional turning point of sorts, so that we can use this energy leading up to the full moon for its best purpose. Because if we are on the wrong side of this energy emotionally, especially Cancer, because we like to Cancer can be a bit of a baby sometimes. And that's the shadow side of Cancer, like where you kind of regress to acting like a kid about certain things. So I think this first quarter moon, especially with that Libra logic, can really help challenge those Cancer emotions and gain some awareness, because the sun's there. So we're looking for some solar awareness, so that we can rationally look at our emotions and be able to get over this emotional hump or this emotional obstacle that we're probably going to be faced with at this time.
Yeah. And I really love that, Mel, because it's like this whole month, the Cancer season, we're learning about emotional management, how to respond in a way that's emotionally intelligent. And a part of that is being objective sometimes. And what's really cool is that we'll have this first quarter moon in Libra, full moon in Capricorn, and then the last quarter following that. So it's cool because these points, especially this first quarter in Libra, it helps us to be more objective, and it helps us to say, okay, like, I'm feeling this way, but do I really have to become so overwhelmed by all of these emotions? And I think it creates, to link it to the tarot cards that we have for this aspect, it creates a tempering kind of effect.
Yes. Because Libra, the talent of Libra, and hopefully a Libra moon, would be able to see both sides of a matter, and be able to look at something logically and look at feelings logically. Now, granted, that can lead to indecision, and that's also what Libras can be known for, is becoming indecisive, because they can see both sides of things. But I think because of that little objectivity and that ability to maybe detach a little more at this time, is really going to, I think it'll be different from what we've been dealing with the last couple of days prior, which we'll talk about shortly. But I think that I don't know, I really feel it's an emotional turning point, because we're already going to have processed certain things that have happened to us. And, cause we have a moon in Virgo earlier, right before that Libra, first quarter. We have those Mercury transits we're going to be, dealing with. So I feel that we are really going to get our emotions on board once we get into that more, logical, detached, well, I don't know if Libra's that detached, but from a mental standpoint and being able to, having more objectivity. Yes, Libra definitely has that over Cancer, I would say. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I think most of all, what I really see out of this first quarter moon is, us emotionally wanting harmony in our life. How can, cause we're about to talk about some Pluto transits and, Pluto, uproots things, and, kind of can be destructive. So I think by the time of this first quarter moon happens, we're really just going to be wanting harmony and peace in our lives. And it can actually be an excellent time to make amends with someone, if you're challenged to do so and you haven't yet. And it could be emotionally challenging, to come together and not divide the rift any longer. So if anybody is on the outs with some people at this time, or on the outs because of certain transits in the earlier in that week, this is a good time to bring harmony into our lives, I would say, and to make that amends with someone who you love. We don't want to fight with our loved ones. So,
yeah, I think that it's valuable to bring in the shadow side of everything, and the shadow of this entire week, and especially this first quarter in Libra. The shadow would be to avoid conflict at all costs.
Yes, exactly.
It would be like, I don't want to deal. So I am curious, if you find yourself having these feelings or having this behavior where you're trying to avoid things, or you're trying to stick your head in the sand, so to speak, that's the shadow side of this energy. And to be honest, it will make things more challenging. You'll actually feel more confident and more empowered, and there will be a more sense of ease when you do face things, when you do the thing that you maybe don't want to do because it's a little bit hard or annoying, but then when you actually do it, it's going to feel really good. That's what this energy is supporting this week.
Absolutely. Because I like to look at squares as a turning point. Like, this is when we're being challenged and called to take action in our lives, to where it turns a page in a sense. So that being said, let's talk about these tarot cards that were drawn for the first quarter moon in Libra. And so I drew the Temperance card as our focus and the Fool as our grounding. I know. And two major arcana cards here. So there's something up with this first quarter moon. Like, these are these type of cards are really pointing to that what we're going through now is part of our spiritual path. And these aren't little things that we can change at any moment. Like, we're all being forced to look at this energy and engage with it so that we can make progress in the direction we're going. And with that Temperance focus, it's really about patience and moderation, being patient and finding the balance between things. Especially with that Libra and Cancer energy, I really want to know if we can still see things logically while really maintaining our emotional passion for something. Because that can be challenging to balance both of those energies together, especially with the Fool there, because a lot of this might, especially it's the first quarter, we are building something. And so we might have just been starting out in some regard. And we need to have patience in the matter, keep up the enthusiasm. The enthusiasm is great. Just don't get burnt out too fast when, things aren't going, exactly how you pictured them or as fast as you wanted them to unfold, I would say. Shawna, what do you think about these cards?
Yeah, I love the theme of patience for these cards and for this aspect. I'm reminded when you said that the first quarter moon can also be a time of compromise. It can be a time where you say, okay, I have this project or I have this thing or even this relationship where I want this specific outcome, either short term or long term. And it may be a time where you're reconsidering how much or how little you want to compromise to get to your end goal, whether you want to get there quickly or if you're okay with longer term. And I think that the Fool is an excellent reminder to, yes, like take steps forward and to keep that faith and to have this lightness and this curiosity. And then the Temperance is like, okay, like where do you need to move forward? Where do you need to chill out a little bit? And that's, you know, for our listeners, you'll know where that is for you. You'll know where there's a sense of like pushing too hard or needing to pull back, or maybe you need to challenge yourself a little bit more. So I think the Temperance really, it does bring up this sense of patience and finding the common ground.
Yes. Because, you know, Temperance can also touch on the fact that, our emotions might have been a little excessive lately. You know, we're dealing with all these Cancer planets. And so the whole idea of balancing there is to like really practice a little restraint around, you know, our emotions that are just coming up and we're feeling like the feelings are revved. They're amped. So what it's really asking, I think with that Fool there too, as, Shawna was just saying, you know, is trusting in the process. Like, focus on the present moment, because here we are. We have all these planets in Cancer, and Cancer, sometimes has a little bit of an issue with staying out of the past, you know? It's an issue, you know? Yeah. We reminisce for good and we dwell for bad. So just know that if emotions have been kind of like going a little crazy, just practice a little restraint and just trust in the process. Be present for the moment. And, you know, have a sense of humor about what's happening. Because the Fool, you know, is happy-go-lucky. He's willing to take a risk. And just have a good time. And so, yeah, you might stumble and fall a few times, but I think if you are in a balanced, if you balance out that risk, you're going to be in a better spot. Like we may have to take a risk at this time. But we have to do so with foresight, you know, like don't bet the farm, but at the same time, don't stay stuck. And that really is how we are getting that moderation. You know, we can't stay there, but we can't rocket ahead. Once again, we're like, I think last week, weren't we talking about gradual progress?
Yeah, that was the theme of last week. It was one step at a time.
Yeah.
So basically, don't be afraid to look like a fool, but, you know, like, but don't put everything in there.
Yes, exactly. You know, take a risk, but not too much of one.
Yeah.
A calculated risk. Perfect. Okay, so to wrap up this first quarter moon in Libra, I just have some questions for you to take away and ask yourself. And those questions are, I would ask, what areas of my emotional self need more balance? I would ask, how are my feelings allowing me to see both sides of the matter? I would ask, what actions can I take to gain more harmony with those around me? And lastly, I would ask, how can I make peace with everything that is happening in my life?
Love those.
And there's that first quarter moon. Oh, all right. Well, now we get to move on to some meaty topics. Just when you thought the first quarter moon wasn't enough, here we bring you Mercury and Mars opposing Pluto, and what we title "Tell Me How You Feel." So that Mercury is going to be exact in opposition with Pluto and Capricorn on Thursday, June 29th at 5:34 p.m. Pacific time. That will be Friday, 12:34 a.m. Universal time and 10:34 a.m. Aussie time. And then for that Mars, it's going to be exact on Sunday, July 2nd at 4:58 a.m. Pacific time. And then Sunday, 11:58 a.m. Universal Time and 9:58 p.m. Aussie time. And that will be at, in the Cancer and Capricorn axis at 18 degrees, Cancer and Capricorn. So Shawna, bring us in with the quote that you have for this, very intriguing transit.
Yes, and it is intriguing. So this quote is by a writer and a poet who I came across on Instagram. Her name is Mel Energetic, and her Instagram is I'm Lightbulb, if you want to look her up. She says, "Do not tame the wolf inside you just because you've met someone who doesn't have the courage to handle you." And I saw this and I was like, oh my gosh, this is Mercury and Mars opposite Pluto all the way. Because this transit, it's rooted in Pluto. It's rooted in these Plutonian themes of, what is it what's the shadow that's coming out? Mars opposite Pluto challenges us to get in touch with righteous anger, with how it is that we really feel, what our even unconscious behavior patterns are, and truly how we're feeling. Tell me how you feel.
Yes.
With Mercury in the mix, that's the tell me part. Mercury says, let's talk about all of this shit that's going on.
Yep.
And so I love this quote. I selected this very intentionally because there may be things that come up this week where it requires courage of you. It requires courage of the person that you're speaking to listen to you. And so I really want you to remember that if someone doesn't respond to you in a way that is, holding space for you, or they don't have the time or the patience or even the capacity to listen to you at the deeper level that you need, that is not about you. Yeah. That is about them and their capacity. And, it doesn't make them a bad person. It just is. So, don't tame that wolf inside of you just because someone may not be ready to hear it or to handle it.
Well, I love that quote for the reasons that you just gave. And I also love it for its kind of like double entendre nature, to where, don't tame the wolf inside you because someone doesn't have the courage to handle you. And that someone could be you. Like sometimes, we focus, especially that Pluto is asking us to uproot certain things about ourselves, certain things of how we communicate and our mind works, how our actions are, how we aggressively go things, and our ambition in a sense. And sometimes what happens with our more fearful emotional nature is we compromise certain aspects of ourselves, but not for the good. Like we almost tame our own wolf because we're scared and we don't have the courage to handle ourselves. So just know that, like Shawna was saying, there's a really good chance that this can happen outside of you, especially with an opposition, and it could be with someone else. But if it's not with someone else, it could be a play on shadow aspects of yourself that are trying to tame a passion inside of you that really needs to be brought forth and birthed. Because here we have these two planets, Mercury and Mars, essentially reaching their apex of their cycle with Pluto, right? This is this is like the tension that has released from when it started. I'm not sure what those dates are. I don't know if you know them, Shawna, but
I don't, but I might be able to look it up as we're speaking.
Well, if you do, if not, no big deal. But it's true, here we are. The energy has been building since, those conjunctions, with Pluto. And so now we're apexing here, essentially. And that day, while that is happening, at least while the Mercury one is happening, we're going to have that moon, in Virgo, who's ruled by Mercury. And Virgo can be a little nitpicky, but also getting real and discerning what, is really going on. So I feel like that moon in Virgo, during that, Mercury opposite Pluto transit, can be helpful in some ways, but maybe a little too focused on, certain details and maybe emotional details, that we have to uproot, because Pluto is really asking us to become responsible for our minds and our actions right now. You know, especially being in Capricorn. We have to, yeah.
Yeah, one of the notes that I wrote down for myself before we started recording was don't fuck around with this. Like, don't beat around the bush. Don't try to hide things. Yeah. And also because, Mel, you know, I love looking at all of these aspects and cycles. So for this particular aspect, since it's an opposition, I would go back to the beginning of when it was a conjunction, when Mars and Mercury met with Pluto. And for Mars-Pluto conjunction, which I feel is like so critical, like such an intense, powerful time. That happened in mid-October 2016. So that was at 15 degrees Capricorn, October 19th. And I don't know about y'all, but I had some intense moments there during that time. But yeah, it's like, how are you managing your energy? How are you managing that fire inside? And that can be anger. That could be just like your compulsion to physically be active. And yeah, I love, Mel, how you bring it back to maybe it's conflict inside of the self, and how do we reconcile these parts of ourselves where we want to be kind and accommodating and we want to soothe, which is the Cancerian energy. But then we also want to say, hey, like, this is me and this is who I am. And I can be a little gritty or a little rougher around the edges sometimes too. Like, how do we bring those two together on the inside?
Yeah. Because I mean, you were just talking earlier in the episode about Cancer's passive qualities. And here we have this first quarter moon that's touching with Jupiter and Libra there. I'm not sure if we mentioned that before, but it is in a loose T-square during that first quarter. But then we also have that Mercury square Jupiter that we're going to be talking about in a moment too. So I think all this is really leading up to growth in our lives and how we can really no longer be passive in certain situations. And it really is a time for transition and transformation right now. And Pluto is asking us to face that because, you know, with Mars in Cancer, it's in a weaker position. It's in its fall. And so it's known to maybe not have the courage that Mars normally has, and why it can get that reputation as being a little passive aggressive, because it's like courageous faculty isn't, I mean, it's not that it's not there, it's just not, it's a sidestep and crab, you know, like it kind of goes this way and it'll step over this way. It's not like a direct Aries, you know, like rocket to the finish line. It's like, so I really think that there's might be just a call to action and to no longer be passive about certain things in our life so that we can grow. And through that, there's a chance that there could be intense communication at this time. We might have to take radical actions, or someone might take those on us. You know, because Pluto, it's like one day you're standing on solid ground and the next morning you wake up and that's gone, you know, like what you thought was your solid foundation. You know, it could be gone. And that's the whole thing with Pluto is like we were talking about. It's like, don't fuck around Pluto because he will root out whatever it is that needs to go. And you'll find that you might be holding on to things that you no longer can. And, you'll try to hold on. But you can't. Pluto will take it away. So.
Yeah. And I don't, you know, Pluto, I always have conflicted feelings talking about Pluto because I don't want anyone to be afraid of Pluto. I think that Pluto gets a bad rap because of its intensity, and because Pluto in the birth chart, Pluto transits do have this theme of stripping away what is no longer necessary. Yes. And that stripping away is typically not a very pleasant process because something only needs to be stripped away when you've become attached to it, but it no longer serves you. So there's this like, this false sense of comfort that we're clinging to possibly. And so, just to be very frank, this is an intense transit. So if you're feeling this week like, oh my God, I've lost something, or I have nothing, or any of those kind of terms come up for you, like a sense of loss, that is very normal. And I want you to know that this loss or this stripping away, it's for, like Mel was saying, it's for growth. It's for your benefit, because something new is going to come in that's going to serve you so much better. And all that you need to do this week is to get through this time where there is this stripping away or this loss, if that's what you're experiencing. I'm not saying you will, but it's a potential, where there is, it's almost like plants being pruned. That's what I want to think about.
It's true, because
perfect, right?
Yeah, you have to prune that rose to get the next rose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise it's just going to die and wither there. And then you got a dead rose.
Yeah.
So, it might smell kind of sweet, but after a while it'll disintegrate, and you're going to want to prune that. And like, we've, pointed out in previous podcasts, is that if it's not in your chart, chances are it's not going to be felt as much. But any of you Pluto people out there, any of you Scorpio risings like myself, any of you people that have Pluto, God, I have Sun and Moon in a T-square with Pluto, so that'll be exciting. But so me, I need to be on the lookout. So if you are, not that I have to like things are gonna be coming at me, but chances are things will, because it's just the nature of my chart. So if in your chart, you have that Scorpio energy, or you have those, Pluto contacts, then chances are this time is going to be, ramped up for you. Same with you Jupiter people out there. Here we're talking about that first quarter moon, conjunct Jupiter in Libra, and then we're about to go with our Mercury square, Jupiter in Libra. And so any Jupiter people out there are going to want to be on a, because that's the thing, is like everyone's talking to each other. So granted, you might not be a Pluto person, but the fact that Jupiter's talking to Pluto over there and you're a Jupiter person, you're probably going to get some Pluto in with it. It's like a little, astro cocktail in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the cool thing about astrology, is the more that a person knows about their nature, the more that they know, like, okay, I'm a Jupiter person. I have a tendency to, have a lot of faith, but also to be overly optimistic. Or I'm a Pluto person. I have Pluto in my first house, or Scorpio rising. I have like this craving for intensity, and sometimes it gets me into trouble, etc. Like, you, like you said, Mel, you know what to be on the lookout for.
Yes. So that's a very important key just to keep in mind, because depending on where it touches. So, with Pluto there, I really think we're just regenerating our own thoughts and drive in a way. And that might be, not as pleasant for some, but in the end, it's going to be just really asking us to, operate from a more emotionally mature level. And especially with our dealings with others, because once again, we're talking about opposition here, and even that Jupiter in Libra. Our emotional maturity is really going to be tested, I think, with how we think, how we communicate, and the actions that we take, because actions are worth 1,000 words. That's a picture, but I don't know. Action,
I think
whatever
that's a picture,
that means. You know what I mean?
You did a mishmash of them.
Yes.
It's
so relevant.
Actions are more
They speak louder than words.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes, that.
That's perfect for this transit, actually, Mel. Actions speak louder than words, for sure.
Yeah, because there's tension there, and with that operation, well, hopefully no one, but with the opposition, we're going to be asked to cooperate and compromise, and maybe to not become a big baby about certain things. 'Cause that's, once again, Cancer can be a little bit of a baby if on the shadow side. So, so don't do that. You got to mature up and own up to it, and just do the best you can. And something's going to come from it. Like Shawna was saying earlier, is that it's rooting out whatever it is that no longer works in your life. And you might be comfortable with it, but it doesn't allow you for growth. And this week to me is an insane amount of growth, I feel, especially with that Jupiter, all that Jupiter connection.
Yeah. And I think there's so much support here from the tarot cards too, because it's like when we are adulting and doing the things that we need to do, then there's support. Do you want to talk about those, Mel?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I drew a focus and a grounding card for both of these aspects together. So we're kind of focusing a little more on the Pluto aspect of the transit. And what I got was the Seven of Swords as our focus and the Sun as our grounding card. And Shawna and I were talking about this earlier. We always do a pre-call prep with each other to chat it up and get ready to talk to you guys. But we found it was funny that this Seven of Swords just keeps coming up in certain areas. And how I really see that is, there might be something that's hidden here, or there's a secret that needs to come to light. Like, has anybody been hiding anything from someone else? Or have you been avoiding something? To the point where it's really holding you down and you can't grow because you're avoiding this key aspect, of growth. And you really have to, with the Sun there, we're so supported with the Sun. So I feel like this, this hiding and this keeping of secrets and this, avoiding or procrastination of some sort, is really of no benefit, because so much good surrounds us right now that if we're willing to let go, of those swords in a sense, cause the card is like holding on to those little swords, or I've got this thing, or I'm keeping to myself, chances are you have to give those up, in order to really stand in your own light and to bring certain things, certain secrets or, hidden agendas to light, so that you can grow, and you can grow with another person. Cause here we are once again talking about this opposition. So Shawna, what do you think about these Pluto cards?
Yeah. Well, I love the Sun card. The Sun is such a message of encouragement, and it's like the word blessing keeps coming to me. And,
Yes.
And also with the Seven of Swords, I'll take it back to what you said, Mel. Maybe it's an inside job. Maybe there's a way that you're hiding from yourself in some way. Or because this is Mars, maybe you're hiding from what it is that you really want. And, maybe there's an opportunity, the Sun, to claim what it is that you really want, either in a major way or in a subtle way. And so, this is such encouragement for going towards that and for claiming what it is that you want.
I love that, because this card actually also taps into being able to do some self-examination, especially with those sevens. So like you're saying, it is like, get real with yourself, right now, especially during the Mercury transit, because Virgo, we're going to have that Virgo moon. So this is a good time to examine and to get practical, around your own feelings, because keep in mind, these contacts are happening in Cancer. So this whole Cancer season, the moon's transit through the signs and how it interacts with all these, aspects we're going to be talking about through the month, is really going to be that much more intense, because all these planets are traveling through Cancer. So yes, self-examination, is a perfect time to go in and, what do you really want? Are you holding on to something that, it's almost safe to be there, but really you're not going anywhere, and you might even be isolating yourself from other people, because that's the thing too, is this card tends to kind of go it alone, and, you do what you can for yourself, yourself, and there's kind of a selfish vibe to it. It's not always selfish. I mean, it could be you living on your own terms, as long as you do so in a diplomatic nature. But I really feel like this is the time to get real about yourself and what you might have been avoiding, or things that you're just not, things that we might need to give up at this time in order to really rise to the call of Pluto's transformation. Because that's, as Shawna said earlier, Pluto doesn't want to make our lives hell. Pluto wants to get us to the area that we need to be. And through that growth, there is sometimes challenge and possible despair. But it won't last long because there's something to replace it. And we're in the first waxing time of the moon too. So these are growing aspects. These are growing pains, as I would like to say in a sense.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up this Pluto talk with our Mercury and Mars opposing Pluto. And here's a few questions for you to take away and ask of yourself this week. I would ask, how can I free my mind of old emotional patterns? What unconscious actions do I exhibit that need to be let go of? I would ask, where in my life may I be passively avoiding an area that needs renewal? I would ask, how can I stay courageous to go about the transitions that I'm making? Because we're all changing right now, and it takes a lot of courage to step into a new reality. So,
yes.
I would also ask, have I been hiding something? Is it time to bring something out in the open? Does something need to come to light? And then lastly, I would ask, how can I maturely tell others how I feel?
I love that one.
I know. So.
Nice. Oh, those are good questions, Mel.
So hopefully everyone can take those away, and it's not a bad idea to write them down too, because if you listen to this at the beginning of the week and things are just brewing, it's very valuable to listen once again towards the end of the week and really process those questions and how you're feeling and what's happened. So little check-in points throughout the week can be very beneficial. Just check in with yourself to see how how everything's going and to be real with yourself. And I find that really helps me. I don't know about you, Shawna, but I like little check-ins through the week.
Yeah. For me, I find that my life is so much better when I'm doing some type of daily reflective process, whether that's meditation or inquiry or pulling cards for myself. It just makes things so much easier.
It helps put it into perspective,
Yeah, totally.
So speaking of perspective, let's go on to our last aspect we'll be talking about this week. And that is going to be Mercury in Cancer squaring Jupiter in Libra, and what we deem shift your perspective. That's going to be at 14 degrees Cancer in Libra, and will be exact on Tuesday, June 27th at 11:21 a.m. Pacific time, which is also Tuesday, 6:21 p.m. Universal Time, and Wednesday, 4:21 a.m. Aussie time. And for me, I'm just going to, a little caveat here. I really think this transit is going to start the chain of all the transits that we have talked about already. So Shawna, bring us in with your quote that you have for Mercury square Jupiter.
Yes. So this quote is by Kristen Armstrong. She is a 3-time Olympic gold medalist in road bicycle racing. So Kristen says, "It's not only moving that creates new starting points. Sometimes all it takes is a subtle shift in perspective, an opening of the mind, an intentional pause and reset, or a new route to start to see new options and new possibilities." And I love this for this transit because Mercury is about your mind. It's about your perspective, your thought process. It's how you intellectualize things. And Jupiter is this sense of expanding. Jupiter brings in new opportunities. Jupiter is all inclusive. And this is a square. So a square is something that you can't ignore. It's something that's presented to you and you have to do something about it. There's this huge opportunity this week to shift your perspective, to look at things in a new way. And this may be an inside job. It may be you just have this like light bulb moment. it may also be that something happens on the outside and it makes you look at something in a different way. And as Mel said, this is all related to the transits that we've been talking about in this episode. But, I love that it's like sometimes, this is a good reminder for this week. Sometimes you don't have to do anything. Sometimes it's just changing your perspective and then new possibilities come in.
Oh, Shawna, you're going to have to say that one more time because we had a little audio drop. So what do you want us to remember?
What did I say?
I know. That's what happens when we podcast. Sometimes there's little technical difficulties.
Yeah. Okay. So what I really want you to remember is that, you don't always have to do something to fix a problem. Like this week, we've been talking about, keeping it real and facing conflict. And at the same time, if there's a challenge and you've talked it out and you've engaged with that conflict, sometimes there's a new opportunity or a new possibility that comes in just through changing your perspective by having that conversation or by processing things. And so, what I want you to know is you don't always have to do something to fix the problem. Sometimes you just need to engage with it, even if that's just in an analytical kind of way. And then maybe you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of this other possibility? Why didn't I think to do this? And then it opens up.
Exactly. Because here we are, also and we mentioned this earlier in the episode, but this is the day Mercury is also going to be trining Neptune.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of that kind of watery, like a dreamy, imaginative vibe going on here. But also maybe a sense of working a little too well with some disillusion in our life and not seeing things quite clearly or being confused. Cause here we are, we're being challenged. Our mind is being challenged. And it is an emotionally charged mind right now with that, Mercury in Cancer. So I feel like part of the disruption here might be with, how our emotions are operating within our own mind, and how we are probably being challenged to get a clearer view of that and to think a little more impartially, about it. Like our reasoning abilities, that Mercury in Cancer. So it's subjective right now. We're very subjective. And for that growth, we're going to need more objectivity, which is that Jupiter in Libra.
Yeah, and I wonder, it'll be really interesting to see how things go for everyone, because I wonder if that Neptune trining could actually be some support, if that could just enhance the ability to shift the perspective. I think that could be, like you say, Mel, it could be a fine line where it's like, okay, am I going into delusion? Am I being the shadow of Jupiter even is to be overly optimistic and to be like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. And, coming up with these big schemes, but then, but the higher side of the Neptune and Jupiter could be, like these blessings or these creative visions that come in that are useful at some point in time.
Yeah. And it could even be like shifting your perspective of where you see certain illusions or are confused about things or whatever. Like it doesn't have to be like you're in it in the moment and it's happening, because with that trine, it might be more of the mind is aware of these patterns a little bit more and maybe can see it from a more spiritual perspective, because here we have two water signs that are being challenged with this air. So and here we are once again with Jupiter in Libra. And, I talked about earlier in the episode is that Libra energy can be faced with indecision. So there's a chance right now that where we're trying to grow in life and the path we're trying to go down and how we're trying to get our mind in gear around all this could be an indecisive point. We might not be able to make a decision right now. And that's where we're getting our square. And we could be emotionally held back because here we got that Mercury in Cancer, who has emotionally subjective considerations. So sometimes when, sometimes when a decision needs to be made in our lives, like how many times have you needed to make a decision, but you're emotionally not ready or you're emotionally fearful, about what might happen. And so what do? You don't make the decision. You procrastinate or you pretend not to see what it is that you need to do. And you know, cause we're still, once again, Cancer, that mind can be in the past and we're needing to switch to future growth here. We're needing to challenge ourselves to really get, a little balance about how we're growing and a little impartiality, so that we can make moves in our life. It's the energy of all the planets that are going on right now through, especially up into the solar eclipse, and then through fall is these planets are go, go, go. Like this is time to make some action and you don't want to be sitting in any type of indecision, and not, you know, going forward in your life. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. And the moon is going to be in Leo that day too. So chances are we can be a little dramatic, you know, about how we're feeling, you know, because once again, we have Mercury in Cancer and that, and then where that Mercury, current ruler is going to be in Leo, who can be a little, I mean, granted, me and Shawna love some Leo action. We have,
yep, we got some Leo going on. Leo.
Yeah. However, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, I love that, Mel. And what I notice with people that have challenges regarding indecision or second guessing themselves, and myself included, I have this too. But one pattern that I notice is that when someone is having a hard time making a decision or pulling the trigger, or they're not really sure what to do, it's because they're going into the story. They're going into a story of the future or the past or what this means, or they're putting so much weight on possibilities and the negative possibilities of what could happen. And this is classic Libra energy for sure, because Libra can always see all the sides. And it's also Mercury and Cancer energy too, because there's this sentimentalness. And so I think that is definitely a shadow of this aspect. And this week is like, oh, you know, if I do this, then this bad thing might happen, or what if I fail, etc. And I think this idea really speaks to the tarot cards that we'll talk about in a moment. But it's like, you know, how can you drop the story? How can you say, okay, this is what's actually happening. This is the reality. And these are my options. And I find for me, when I do that, when I say, okay, these are my options, and I look at things, and right now everything becomes so much more clear, and it's so much more easy to make a decision.
Yes. Because here we are with what I said earlier, how I think this really sets up the whole vibe for this week, because it's the first transit that we encounter. Because here it is, Mercury squaring Jupiter, and then a few days later, we have that Mercury opposing Pluto. So I feel like there's, you know, a destructive quality to these transits. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Because as we just talked about in great depth earlier about how certain things need to be broken down in order to be, rebirthed in some way. So I think this is kind of like the first stepping stone, in shifting how your mind works in order to really get on board with this call for transformation that Pluto is going to be making to us. So this is like the first the first contact where it's like, okay, I need to grow here. I have no choice, to conflunk.
It's a new word. I like that word.
I don't even know what word I'm trying to use there, to be honest, to address what's going on here, and to realize we're going to be challenged in some way for our own growth and our own rebirth in some area of our lives. So yeah, let's talk about those, tarot cards that we got, for, this Mercury square Jupiter. So I drew the 8 of Swords as our focus and the Sun once again as our grounding. So here we have 2 consecutive Swords cards from the last tarot pole for the Pluto transits, and the sun is back again. So I feel that with the sun there, a double sun action, what we're being called to do is for our own good, for our highest light, for our own awareness, for our own vitality, is being called into place here. And these changes that we have to make is for our own well-being and our own growth. And it's a really necessary part of our path. So here we have this Eight of Swords as our focus, which is a lot of times about denial. Have we been denying something? Maybe we clearly see now what it is we've been denying, and we realize that the consequences for not addressing what it is that we're not addressing is really taking away from our lives, and we just can't ignore it anymore. You really have to see things for what they are, and just don't stay stuck in that same place, because a lot of times that card has, in traditional decks, it's a woman who's blindfolded and she's around all these swords and she's bound up, but she's not bound to anything. She's just bound to herself,
Mm-hmm.
So that really, talks about, once again, that indecision and being bound by an emotional fear to make any moves in our lives. So, yeah, Shawna, what do you think about the Eight of Swords and the sun here?
Yeah. So I think, as usual, these cards are perfect for this aspect, because initially I was really struck by the Eight of Swords, the woman that's bound. And, one of the things, the terms that I read about this card is that it's about self-imposed restriction. And that is just the essence of this aspect, is how are you binding or liberating yourself based on your own based on your thoughts and your belief system and your feelings? Like, where are you possibly restricting yourself? And I think the quote in the beginning, by Kristen Armstrong, that really speaks to this. Like, if you are able to shift your perspective in just a tiny way, it can really bring a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
And then that's supported by the sun, which is
Exactly.
so cool. I love that so much.
Yeah. With the sun there, I think it's really asking you to take the blindfold off, open your eyes, see all the goodness around you, be grateful, because being grateful is a feeling that you need to tap into. And so with all these Mercury or all these, Cancer transits, how can we tap into that feeling of being grateful for what it is that we have in our life? So that we can really, because there's so much good surrounding us. So let's not stay blocked in any type of fear of moving forward, or being, keeping yourself back, because you really are free. You're free to do whatever it is you want. Well, not always, but you know what I mean. Within some respect, you're free to be you and to go about, life. You have to just let go of that darkness and that, any fears that might be holding you back. And another aspect of the Eight of Swords is, playing some type of martyr in a situation. Everything's going wrong for me, and why should I even try? Because it's just going to go bad, or, and all those negative thoughts, like Shawna was saying earlier, they keep you held back, they tie you up, and you're bound by your own negativity in a sense. So how can you release that and really step into the sun? Because I think good things are really ensured at this time, now that we're seeing double sun. We have three major arcana cards within the tarot. It's asking us for some balance here and there, but we're starting off new things, and we're learning about ourselves and gaining more awareness. And there's a lot of positivity here. I just think that, probably with the Mercury transits are really going to be, the disruptor here, because our mind is everything. How we go about life every day, is kind of directed by our mind and its own mental picture. And whether it's staying logical or whether it's on that subjective emotional side, either way, it's kind of driving the boat. Not that it should, because, obviously it's better to be a little more heart-based, but most of us live in our minds, and maybe not all the time, but a good amount of time, enough to where it needs to be addressed. And this week, I really think that we are going to be addressing our minds and how it works.
Yeah. And I think that, to me, Mercury is about the mind, and it's about this lens that we have. It's the lens through which we see our lives. It's how we interpret things. And I love what you just said, Mel, because yes, like we are 99% of the time, we're more powerful than we think that we are. We have more control than we think that we do. We have more opportunities and more options if we're willing to be open to that. And I also find that in our society, we fear death. We fear death literally. We fear death metaphorically. And I think these two, being more powerful than you think, and this fear or not fear of the death, birth, rebirth process, they're tied, because that's a big message here, is that, yeah, like, is fear of death stopping you? And when I say death, I mean metaphorically, is like fear of failure stopping you. And like, is that really a big deal? Like, yeah, failure sucks. And of course we don't want to go into something, if we have a gut feeling that it's not right. But, sometimes failure is really not as bad, or any of the negative possibilities. Sometimes they're really not as bad as you think that they are.
I think that is a beautiful way of looking at it. And once again, let's go back to that Fool card with the first quarter moon that we're going to be wrapping all these things up with. Like, that Fool is ready to take a risk and get out there and start the path fresh once again. And chances are he's going to stumble. Like, it's always about him walking over that cliff, not looking, and it's like, whoop, down the thing. But, he's fine. He dusts himself off. He gets back up, and it's just part of the journey. So yeah, I think that is a very key point into this transit, is about shifting your perspective, and getting out of that, fear-based thinking and restricting yourself and holding yourself back, from indecision, and not really being able to address certain things in your life. So free yourself during this first transit, because the whole week we're going to be asked to free ourselves in some way from certain things in our lives, shifting this perspective, and then handing those Pluto transits, as Shawna was just talking about, of that death, and transitioning that needs to happen, and just regeneration. That's the thing, is like, you got to remember with death is that it's not a final thing. It's a life and death. Everything about everything is about cycles, and yeah, with a little broad generalization there. So, you can't look at death in your life as any sort of finality. Because even if you're letting something go at this time, here's a Cancer talking about this, but it'll live on in your heart, you can always reminisce about it on another day. As long as it doesn't hold you back.
There's new things coming in too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that is a wonderful way to segue into the questions that we have for this transit. So a few questions for you to take away, for Mercury squaring Jupiter is, where may my thinking be outdated? Where may I still live in the past? I would ask myself, if I'm honest with myself, is there anything I've been denying or pretending not to see? I would ask, do I fear making a decision about something? How can I walk confidently into the light and make peace with my choices? And lastly, how can I shift my perspective to promote the growth that is happening all around me?
Love that.
So there we have it. It's been a very fruitful episode, I would say. We've talked about the first quarter moon, where we're asking you to find peace within conflict. And we've had Mercury and Mars opposing Pluto, which we're deeming, tell me how you feel. Are you able to really share that and take responsibility for your own mind, and regenerate ourselves on a new level? And then lastly, we're asking, how can you shift your perspective, and to free yourself from things that may be holding you back with this Mercury squaring Jupiter? So Shawna, do you have any action items for them to take away this week, to really work with this energy?
Yes, I do. So the action item for this week is to write down and just pick one. Write down one area of your life or one situation that has had some conflict or that's had some challenges, and something where you're like, this isn't working, or I'm trying to work this stuff out, etc. And then do a little brainstorm. What, how are you feeling? What are your options? What are your possibilities? And from that list, I would love it if you were to pick one thing and to do it. If there's one action that you can do towards engaging with this conflict. And I use the word engaging very specifically because it's not about resolving the conflict. It's not about making it go away, but it's like, what can you do to be in it? What can you do, to say, okay, I'm going to, bring myself to this situation in a way that, that shares my integrity and shares my emotional energy and my effort. So that is your action item for this week. Good luck.
Love it. Yes. Perfect. Yes. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this week is going to pan out, and this whole Cancer season, in general. As you know, Shawna and I are very excited. Two Cancers ready for the season. So that being said, I'd love to share with you where you can find us beyond this podcast. You can find me at energeticprinciples.com. Where I share YouTube videos and daily IG advice on Instagram. And currently I have a YouTube video up for this Cancer season that has horoscopes for each sign and its rising sign, if you would like to check that out. And once again, that can be found at energeticprinciples.com, or you can find me on IG at energetic principles. And then YouTube, Energetic Principles, you get it. It's all around the board. Energetic Principles, you'll find me. So Shawna, where can they find you?
Yeah. And I just want to say that Mel's videos are great. They're very detailed. And especially the by signs. So it's helpful if you want to tune into your own energy. So you can find me, at neofeminine.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Neo Feminine Astrology. And I post little daily updates on the moon cycles and the lunar cycles, and I love quotes, so I do that as well. And then I've also started doing, if you have a little quick question, something that you want answered, I've been doing little mini Instagram readings. So if that's something that you want, you can find that on my Instagram page as well.
Yes, I love that. And it's such a great idea. And sometimes you just need some quick advice, you got something on your mind, need some quick advice. And I have not a similar promotion going on. It's more of a local thing. So any of you San Diego residents, I'm doing Tarot in the Park this summer, where we can sit down for 40 minutes and address any questions you might have with short tarot readings. So, Shawna and I are here to help, because this is all generalizations. Yes. And if you want to find out more about your own energy and your own chart and what you have coming up, whether it's a short question or a really in-depth analysis, you can reach out to both of us at the links that we just provided. So we are more than happy to connect with you. In fact, we would love it. And if you have anything to say about this podcast, we would love for you to share it with other people, because your enthusiasm is what really helps keep this afloat. So if you can share it and spread the good word, we'd be more than appreciative. And we'd love to know what you're thinking. If you want to share something with us, or you have a question, please reach out. We would love to connect.
Definitely.
Yeah. So any parting words for this week, Shawna?
No. No, I just
like, no, you're on your own, little kid. Go about your way.
I feel like this week might feel a little bit intense, and so I just want everyone to know that we're sending lots of love, and that, I'll speak for myself, but I think both of us are right in there with you. So, you're not alone is really what I want to say here.
You are not alone. We are here with you. Okay. So I fully agree with that. Yes. We're all going through through the shit, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're right here with you. Yeah, so we're feeling it, and can't wait to be back for next week to see what's in store then. Yes. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time, may the stars be with you.
Namaste.